My favorite words this time of year, some assembly required. We've all gotten one of those boxes. We've all gotten one of those boxes for our loved one, our kids, and it looks so easy until all the parts are spilled out on the floor and you have no idea how to put it together. And so what do? Well, some people read the instructions. Most of us generally go straight to the box and look at the picture, right? Because we believe that if we see a picture of it, that we can replicate that we can make this pile of stuff into that as long as I'm looking at the picture, as long as I know this is what it should look like. And oftentimes that works. It's the idea of having a pattern, an example, something that allows you to say, this is what it should look like. This is what it should sound like. This is where the shiny piece should be on it. And once we have that type of a pattern, that type of an example, we can replicate it. So, my question is this: how do we know what a good, mature, Christian spiritual life is supposed to look like? Do we just decide what that is and then that's what we make our lives into? You see, in the same way that we need a model, we need an example, we need a prototype, we need a spiritual example that we can pattern ourselves after. We need someone to follow. And so this week, as we talk about who it is we follow and how it is we become spiritually mature, I'm going to challenge you to think about those within your community, those within your family, those within your church, that can be a pattern, that can be a model for you to grow with. In the book of Hebrews, the writer, as he's finishing up, says this about the leaders. He says, "Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever." The Bible tells us to look to those that we consider our leaders and to imitate their faith, to pattern our faith and to pattern our lives, our way of life around those things that we see that are good. The one thing in this world is we have to recognize that no one is doing it perfectly. And so we imitate what's good and what's right, and we discard the other. I had a professor all the time that said whether it was the way you read a commentary about the Bible or a Christian book about Christian living, or the way you imitated faith of people, that you have to take all of those things and digest it, eat it like fish. You eat the meat, you eat the good parts, but you take all the bones and the skin and all the other parts and you leave that behind. And that's how we become spiritually mature. And that if we do that enough times, we get the good from many, many, many different people. The Bible over and over shows us that there's one perfect, and then there's others that are patterned after that. As a matter of fact, the defining moment of Israel is the Exodus. The Exodus is all about the moment of the Passover, that moment in which God comes through the land and judges the land by the extinction of the firstborn, but he passes over all of those houses that have the blood on the doors and on the sides. And that's a type pointing to the true archetype, the true reality of salvation that comes through the blood of the real Lamb, Jesus Christ. When we talk about patterning and imitating, we're looking at how people are doing it in this world, but the true type, the actual model is Jesus Christ and how he lived in this world. The author of Hebrews again says that we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. And he's talked about all these people that have lived out their faith and all the things that God has done through them living out their faith. But he comes to the end of that and he says, so the way to apply that is, see how these people have lived in this world, in this life, and therefore, because we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us, the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Doing what? You know the rest of the verse. Fixing our eyes on Jesus Christ, the true Lamb, the one who really did it right, our true model. Fixing our eyes on Jesus Christ, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. We want to talk about becoming spiritually mature. We want to talk about following and imitating and patterning our lives after those people that we respect and that lead us in our faith. Ultimately, that leader is one. That leader is Jesus Christ. And we see how others are doing that to help us get closer to imitating him. This week in small group, there's a few things that I think are relevant that you could discuss. The first question that I think is very obvious is, who in the past has been an example like that for you, that's helped you in your spiritual maturity? The second question would be, if you have places in your spiritual life that you think you're lacking, how do you find someone that you can pattern yourself after? Or do you know people that have those traits that you could pick out right now? The third question I think would be good for your groups is, in a world of originality, how challenging is it to even think about imitating somebody else's way of life? The last question I have for you is to think about this idea of imitating Jesus. And if we're going to imitate Jesus' life, how do we take his life in 30 AD and translate that to 2017? What are the obstacles and what are the things that we can do? What are the things that are pretty easy to do in that? So as we talk about the power of one and each one of us following someone, discuss that in your groups. And join us next week for the power of one.
Because it was like, I had a caller from Fort Worth, Texas. Andy, what's your story?